boys and the girls. 'Cause all those old time squares are gonna step aside. But if you choose, you can still join the ride. So take the past, present, future in your stride. 'Cause the boys and the girls, the rhythm of the world. The boys and the girls are gonna change the world. Everyone knows the future's coming, just can't stop it moving on all over the world. A new rhythm going down so put on a brand new groove in your shoes when the beat revolution gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Put on a brand new groove in your shoes when the beat revolution gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Put on a brand new groove in your shoes when the beat revolution gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Put on a brand new groove in your shoes when the beat revolution gonna change the world with the boys and the girls. Gonna change the world with the boys and the girls.
Well, we know built on skill, that alone don't count. Without the sweat and toils of mine, wouldn't be worth a dime. Got to live and give, yeah and yeah, really putting love in the air. When your neighbor's down, try to pick him up. Nobody can live in despair. Everybody let's sing, sing, sing. The beat ring. Let's all begin.
Hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. Good
Hello.
to get it off to a fun start. I want to welcome everyone to our third part of our series discussing resiliency within our community. We kicked off this 2 months ago discussing workplace. Next, we moved into the hospitality industry. And this month, we're going to be discussing something that is near and dear to all New Orleanians and, of course, across the country. We're going to be discussing arts, music, and entertainment. We've compiled a panelist group of experts and leaders in our community. They're going to share some of their thoughts and insights on what's next for those three major parts of our community. So with that, I want to ask everyone on the phone and tuning in with us to turn off your audio and also turn off your video. That will allow our panelists to be front and center. We are going to be utilizing the chat window on the right side of your window pane. So please fill in any questions throughout the discussion, and we will be feeding those to the panelists at the end of the discussion. So with that, my name is Rebecca Cooley. I'm here at AOS. We've converted one of our small conference rooms to a studio, and I have a newfound respect for everyone in production, which has been fun working with all the Zoom and audio. So with that, I want to introduce all of our panelists, and I'll have them speak a few words in their own, explaining a little bit what they do and how are they in the industry. So Tara, we'll start with you. Tara, I believe you're muted. We are having a little issue with the audio. I'm going to move over to Bryan. Maybe we'll start with you if you make an introduction.
Hey, it's Bryan Bailey, owner operator of the Civic Theater. I'm on the CAC board, Airlift board. So, those are probably my closest links to arts and entertainment and community organizations in New Orleans at this point in time. So I don't know. I'm definitely no expert, but will offer whatever insights I have.
Great. Thank you for being here. And also a little modest. Your perspective is going to be appreciated. We'll move over to Donna.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you well.
Great. So my name is Donna Santiago. I'm an attorney specializing in nonprofit and entertainment. For the past 6 years, I've been the Superdome talent producer for Essence. So I'm work more on the production side. Prior to that, my company, we did directly manage some artists in town. We've moved away from management towards production and consulting in the last few years, but have kind of touched on everything. My partner books and promotes one of the local venues, one of the smaller local venues on Frenchman Street. So we've kind of touched on all points. I was on the board of directors at Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and now I'm on the board of directors of the New Orleans Film Society.
Rebecca, you're muted.
Hey, we'll move over to Alphonse.
Hi, my name is Alphonse Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of New Orleans. I've been with the Arts Council for about 7 years now, and have had the wonderful opportunity to work with some brilliant art administrators and place making professionals to do a lot of good in our city. So we're in the nonprofit sector, and our sort of core functions are to find resources and develop resources for artists and arts organizations, and to activate them so that they can do the good work in the community. That goes for art's sake, but also to apply or leverage the value of artists and determining solutions relative to community development, economic development, and so forth. So happy to join this discussion.
Thank you, Alphonse. We'll move back over to Tara. Still muted. Reid, we'll move over to you while Tara figures out her audio.
Hi, everybody. My name is Reid Wick, and I'm a lifelong musician here in New Orleans, as well as for the last 15 years, I've served as the Membership and Industry Relations Representative for the Recording Academy, which is the Grammy organization. I've been involved in a whole variety of efforts locally, everything from helping musicians recover after Katrina through our Music Cares Foundation, and now helping tons of musicians with the COVID situation. I work a lot in the space of public policy and economic development, working closely with my partner Tara, who we're going to get to hear from hopefully soon when we get there unmuted. But we both are involved with GNO Inc.'s New Orleans Music Economy Initiative, and I've served on numerous local boards over the years, currently on the board of Folk Alliance International, and we had our international conference in New Orleans back in January, so I was really pleased to be able to bring that here. And we're all trying to figure it out, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Rick. And we'll move over to Tara one more time. There is a toolbar at the bottom of All right, we'll let Tara figure that out, and we'll just move into some questions. Well, thank you again to all the panelists who are joining us today. We're going to start off with one of our favorite topics, which is live music. It's, I know for me personally, been one of the biggest effects of COVID is not being able to go and see live music. Obviously, that experience is indistinguishably tied to our nation's cultural and economic fabric. In fact, by reports, 53% of Americans, which is 172 million, attended a concert last year. So I'm going to pose this over to Donna first to tell us, how do you think live music experiences will change as a result of COVID?
So, you know, it's a hard question because government regulations actually are not allowing for live music experiences with a live audience, to, you know, for people to engage that way. We're just not allowed to congregate in those kind of numbers that are required to have a live music show. So everyone's gone to online streaming, which certainly there's a live component as it's happening, but it's not that same communal experience of why people are so drawn to live music, is to have a communal experience more than anything, especially in the festival atmosphere. But I do think that our musicians are getting smarter about technology and how to present themselves in a different way. People are really learning a new way of performing, a new way of coming across to the audience, and to keep the audience engaged in on a screen is harder than to be able to do it live. Hopefully, the public will adopt these minor alterations to their life with masking that will allow us to at least move into another phase of recovery on pandemic, and live music can return to the audience.
Thank you, Donna. And Reid, being a live musician yourself, I was curious your thoughts on the same topic.
Well, there's a really crazy echo from somebody. So, you know, it obviously affects the pocketbooks. Can we figure that out? Is it? Okay, I'll keep going. It's really weird. But as a musician who makes a significant part of my income from playing live, it certainly has affected all of us. And you know, it's a lot of us have compared it to the post-Katrina thing because New Orleans has a unique situation of having gone through Katrina and lost live music opportunities and things like that locally. But in that situation, we were able to leave New Orleans and go play music somewhere else, or we were able to engage in some sort of fundraising activities to help the local musicians and things like that. Whereas this situation is totally, you know, it's everybody across the country and across the world, really. And I think the biggest thing and even though a number of us have engaged in some level of online performance, as Donna was talking about, and there's been a number of successful fundraisers. I know there's been a bunch from Music Cares, our organization. I know Tara's been involved in a bunch of opportunities as well. You know, there's nothing that replaces the feedback you get from an audience.
All right,
as a performer.
you can
And
hear it.
you know, that's what. Now we can hear you, Tara.
Yeah, okay, good. They can hear me. Okay. Third time is a charm. Go ahead.
Now you got to mute, I think. But you know, part of the experience as a musician is the opposite of what you're getting as an audience member, is that feedback loop that you get from performing and having that communal experience with an audience. So that's certainly an emotional aspect of things. But I think when it comes to what the future looks like, I mean, as Donna referenced, you know, the dates keep getting pushed further into the future. You know, for instance, my band, we thought we'd have some 4th of July gigs would be the first ones, and then those got canceled. And then everything in July got canceled. And now we have like a dozen gigs in August, and we've already started to lose those. And, you know, it's the fear of just like, when is that snowball, or opposite of a snowball, when is that, you know, loss of potential income just going to end? And I just think that it's that, you know, the fear of the unknown. And for musicians, you know, for the most part, it's, you know, it's our major source of income. And one of the things that I sort of have talked to a lot of people about is that this COVID situation where we can't perform live is actually the best argument for the initiative that we have going with the New Orleans Music Economy Initiative, in trying to help musicians develop their other income stream possibilities that so many musicians in New Orleans haven't really taken advantage of and really pushed in that direction. So I think this is an opportunity for a lot of the music community people to really take stock of what they have with regards to intellectual property. How do they really put that into systems that can generate income for them? So there's a lot of possibilities and potential silver linings from this too, but I know that's another question later down the line, so I'll stop there. But I want to know who Tara Hernandez is.
Oh yeah, now that everyone can hear me. So thanks for having me and being a little patient. I don't know what was going on. But anyway, first of all, I wear a few hats. As Reid mentioned earlier, you know, we met over coffee, and someone connected us. And then from there, we kickstarted in partnership with GNO Inc. when I was chair, the New Orleans Music Economy Initiative. And like, as he also just said, you know, we want to help music make money in New Orleans, right? Not just, as you know we have more festivals than anyone else, any other city in the country, and that is great and a great source of revenue. But right now, like he said, we understand we'd like to help artists diversify income. So for me, they can make money while they're sleeping, right? And that's through some other means. And so that's one hat. My second hat is that as Donna, I'm currently on the board of the New Orleans Heritage Jazz and Heritage Festival and Foundation, getting it all twisted. And in my role as VP of programs, working with artists to program based on, you know, the revenues with great content, the revenues and the free for the community, based on the artists, based on the festivals, based on our free music school for kids. So just touching Mardi Gras Indians, just touching all parts of the community, including the vendors and the other people that operate at Jazz Fest and in our other festivals. So I'll hush. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Tara, for being here. So I think it's a good segue to talk a little bit about the venues that host these different events. And I know, Bryan, you might have something to shed on this, is that often these independent venues give the first stage or opportunity to live musicians. And as we know, they were the first to close, and it looks like they'll be the last to open. You know, what can we do as a community to support this crucial element of our music industry's ecosystem?
You know, I don't know. That's a pretty open-ended question. I'd say, first off, just taking a step back and looking at, what do we think the future looks like? Now, hopefully there are some things that, there are some patterns that maybe can be improved upon, or we can, do away with bad habits, either from an operating standpoint or for just a community standpoint, and fix that. But if you look at the big picture, I mean, the Civic alone was built in 1906. It survived the Spanish flu, survived 2 world wars. It's been a place for the community to gather and celebrate the arts or celebrate life. And I think throughout history, humankind we are a species that likes to come together, to gather and to celebrate the arts, celebrate life. And we've survived pandemics throughout the history of time. And I don't think this will be any different. I do think people will want to gather, whether it's for weddings or events or just live music and art. So 3 years from now, 5 years from now, I think if you want to look at it as a business model, I think it survives, and there's a lot of optimism for what the future looks like. I mean, what does the next year look like? It's very, very tough. When I started with the Civic, it was my first foray into hospitality operations. I started it as a real estate project because I didn't want to see it become condos. And partnered initially with Bowery Presents, and borrowing their sort of philosophy and their approach. It's artist first, patron second, venue third. The space, there's no reason to come to the space without the artists. And so what do I think the most important thing is for the next year is really focusing on taking care of the artists, of mental health for the artists. I think that's where the community support needs to be. As far as the venue goes, I mean, does it really, I mean, pardon my French, does it suck for us? Yeah. We have no revenue at the moment. And, it's been important to me. We have a great team, and we were on a big roll. Like the Civic had really, when we developed it 7 years ago, what was the philosophy going into it? For us, it was, this is a long play. We're stewards of this space. We don't own it. The community owns it, and we're stewards of that space. And we're here to develop it so that it's around for another 100 years, well past our lifetime. And so all the decisions we made from day one were with that philosophy in mind. And I still think that's the take we have on it. And, we have 4 full-time employees. I told all of them at the beginning, go home, take care of your families, don't worry about your job. You're fine for now. And they still are. And, we think we've got a plan in place to ride out the storm, even if it's another year with no revenue, although that's a long, long storm. Again, I go back to, I think the real focus is, we know that the Civic there will be demand for live music and community events and weddings and parties. We know that will be there. If it's a year or 2 years, it's coming. So right now, I think the best thing that the community can do is focus on artists and how to take care of them, so we have something to listen to when people are ready to come back. We need to see those performances. I mean, we've battened down the hatches. We're trying to make some improvements to the space, do some upgrades that we had in mind and never got to because we were busy trying to take care of all that. And other than that, my focus is my team's sanity and well-being, and beyond that, doing what we can to support the artists in the community. That's where it lives and dies right there. Is you got to have the artists to have something to go watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bryan, we'll be following up with you to get some resources to send out to everyone on the call, how we can support those artists. Reid.
No, he's
I think you're on mute.
I wanted to jump in on what Bryan was saying. There are a number of different efforts, some that are undertaken by the venues themselves. There is NIVA, National Independent Venues Association, and there's also a group of folks that are have put a reopening kind of program together called Revs. And then one of the main functions of the Recording Academy is we do lobbying and public policy at the federal level, as well as the state and city level. And we just endorsed a new bill that was introduced a couple of days ago called the Restart Program. And we were really successful a few months ago in making sure that the music creators and the gig economy folks were included in the CARES Act. And so this Restart program is sort of a follow-up to the CARES Act. And Restart also includes financial assistance for independent venues so that they can weather this storm that Bryan's describing, because it's basically every independent venue is in the same basic boat. And so one of the ways that the general public can be helpful is to write their senator and their congressperson and ask them to support the Restart program, because it really will make a huge difference going forward, because there is no real end of this this epidemic at the moment. So I'll look up the Restart is the acronym, the Restart Act, but I'll look it up and post it in the chat if anybody's interested in.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to you, Reid, GNO Inc., I've gotten them to sign on, and we're actually briefing all of our federal delegation today. It started this morning. They had one-on-ones and worked with Howie to do it. So
good, awesome.
We're doing that. So yeah, I would echo that, and I know Bryan would be very happy for that support.
Alphonse, I wanted to turn a question to you. Being under lockdown for the last couple of months, we've seen art and design lovers sort of have a new or reinvigorated appreciation for museums and art. What are you seeing in ways of institutions being able to entice visitors back while still adhering to these evolving government policies?
Yeah, it's been difficult. Just to echo what has been said already, we're in a crisis that the pivot point is going to be in all of this. And so, I know a lot of artists and artist organizations are really concerned with past the stimulus package that's being approved, and even the second one, and some of the other initial responses. The Greater New Orleans GNO Inc. did an amazing job in raising funds for musicians, and there have been other groups to do some things as well. But folks are looking at what is the long-term impact of all of this, and how will folks really just keep the doors open. And so in the arts, which is, I like to think of the arts, even though we're in the arts nonprofit sector, we're part of the overall creative industry. And many times, especially in a city like New Orleans, which is very tied to tourism and the ability to gather, that impacts folks going to the opera, folks going to the ballet, folks visiting a museum, so forth and so on. And so that there's been a lot of discussion on the back end of how we can sort of resolve this or confront the problem using other creative means. There's, at the end of the day, the livelihoods of people are what's most important, even though some of our industries are suffering. But I also think that this is an opportunity to kind of accelerate the development. I'm sorry, someone was, I think something's moving in the background. But anyway, it also presents an opportunity to accelerate the development of virtual support creative industries and creative professionals. I can think of when the crisis first happened, we had to stop our monthly arts market, which is an opportunity for arts entrepreneurs and makers to sell fine artworks or art. So immediately we went to think, okay, well, we know that this is a very important part of artists' revenue stream. What are some newer ways that we can provide a platform for artists, connect them to the greater community, so that they can continue to sell their work? So I do think that this is an opportunity to accelerate what has been happening already, which is using virtual tools, virtual platforms to give artists, a greater opportunity to connect to not only the local community, but nationally, internationally, so forth and so on. So, you know, I know that some of our policy makers and business leaders have been, you know, participating in discussions to figure out how that sort of thing can come about quicker. I know that our policymakers have also been trying to discuss at what point open up venues, or what are some other sort of creative ways in which we could kind of get some of that visitorship back. But for now, I do think that there's still opportunity to go out, enjoy public art and public spaces. I think that there could be an opportunity in the future to have outdoor events for some of these organizations that's, you know, socially distant and responsible. It all depends on, again, if spaces are opened up, or if an organization or an artist is taking a hit on a revenue, if we can waive fees and that sort of thing. But I do think that there's some opportunity both in just using our public environment, but also our virtual tools.
Creativity has definitely been what artists and operators have had to respond to this crisis. So I wanted to transition that over to Donna and get your opinion on what have you found is working and that will actually become part of your new normal.
So we have found that there is a way. Well, I'll speak from the festival perspective now. So Essence did do a virtual festival for 2 weekends. There's, you know, live. It's a 4 to 5 day event. But going virtual, it ended up being an 8-day event of specific hour banks. But they were able to gauge pretty well with the online audience by really giving an array of experiences. So it wasn't just the live music. They engaged in all their panels and every extension that they have. So they have a wellness house, and they have a money and power seminars. And so by engaging every hour in another one of their extensions, they really did increase their audience. And so that's going to continue year round now. So that was a really positive win there. And I think as far as the film festival, the New Orleans Film Society, we are right now engaged in a strategic planning season, which was something we were geared up to do before the pandemic, and we just decided to go through with it. Zoom. It's being funded from the consultant is a national consultant that was a grant that we received, and so we just decided we're not going to put it off. We need to do it. Then the pandemic came in, and it kind of shifted the conversation of the strategic plan, because as we realized that we were so focused on having a gala and a festival, and that was some of the biggest revenue generator, that now we're diversifying what we see as potential revenue generators, which I think we probably would not have thought of it. So I think it's really inspiring people to think in different ways than they had locked themselves into a very specific model. And now people are getting more creative about and really thinking about what are new ways to engage an audience that was really not anything people were spending time on. Like boards maybe were not spending time on it, executive directors were not spending time on it, artists were not spending time on it, and now it's imperative. I mean, you have to, for your survival, you have to think. The challenge, let's say for the film festival, is how can we launch a virtual film festival and exist behind a paywall when there's so much content available to people that they wouldn't have to go beyond the paywall. So the programming and the curation is going to have to be really at another level so that people want to go behind the paywall. That's kind of where I'm seeing, I just see higher level of thinking right now.
Yeah, and do you have dates set for the film festival?
The film festival dates, we believe will stay in their traditional, which is at the end of October.
Okay, great. We'll be on the lookout. Tara, I wanted to pose the same question to you, and I know you're just full of creativity and innovation.
So Some of you know that when we first kind of went home, we banded together and put on a 3-hour virtual benefit festival, and we were successfully able to raise money for about 157 artists at $500 each. So that was one way, but I agree with Donna. People have lots of things that are attracting their attention, and to get them to go beyond a paywall is another thing. But I'll tell you a couple of things. I do some work in the technology space, and video gaming and music have been merging, right? So just the DJ Marshmello and Travis Scott in Epic in the Fortnite games, I think he had almost 30 million viewers, right? At one time, but over 40, almost 46 million, people who came back after. And it wasn't a full concert, it was a short experience. But what I'm getting to is there's several other gaming or other type of media technology companies that are fast and furious doing business in creating relationships with the music industry in order to provide artists with a way to interact, and not just in the traditional ways of, you drop in the room and you view, but, maybe a chat feature or some other interactive where they're having direct communication with their fan base. And I see a lot of that percolating. Some of it has been released and several things are in the works, and they're coming from various, like I said, media content from video games and otherwise companies. So I would say pay attention to that. And then that's one example through what we call, I guess it would be a sync license, where the artist is able to generate a different revenue source than having to physically perform. But I've actually seen one where the artist, John Legend, while he was performing, he was within the video game world and he could chat with the audience. So I would just kind of pay attention to some of those options because I see them coming.
Very cool. And we've seen technology play a big role in several industries pivoting during this time. I'd love to know, Alphonse, how you guys are using it, from virtual gallery tours to artists, maybe presenting their work in a different way. What's working in your industry?
Tara made a couple of great points and references to some projects that are developed. And I think that, just from the nonprofit standpoint, we're catching up with thinking as innovative as sort of some of the for-profit businesses. But we are using tools like social media, websites, Zoom to carry our programming. So, for example, I mentioned the virtual arts market, wake of the pen virtual experience that actually generated much more attention, if you could believe it or not, than some of our in-person markets. So that gave us an indication that folks were being reached outside of New Orleans. Now what we're thinking about is, okay, how can we take that and create a platform long-term so that even if we're able to come back and gather, that's still a resource, another opportunity for artists in our community. I heard this from one of my team members who participated in a convention center, a focus group, this concept of phygital, like being phygital. Like the arts, I don't think will ever go away from some sort of gathering, even if it's 50% or 25%. But what are some ways we can mix the in-person physical opportunities with some of these digital platforms? So that's some of what we're thinking about right now, especially when you think about how nonprofit organizations are often dependent upon fundraisers like galas and that sort of thing. What does it look like to have a reduced audience at a gala, but also allow folks to be able to participate via whatever video platform that may be, which also great, provides opportunity for artists maybe from places that we would not be able to really have artists come from to participate as well. So just thinking about ways to pivot and use virtual versions of the things that have been successful is some of the ways in which we're thinking. And I've seen other organizations do sort of the same thing with gallery tours. We have a storefront space, artist in residence space in Canal Place. So we've put on virtual fashion shows with some designers in the community, so forth and so on. So yeah, absolutely, we are still thinking, and we're trying to get to the point to where as nonprofits think as innovative as for-profits. But I think that this crisis is making us take a step back and pivot. And I like to think my team is pretty creative. So I think that learning curve is not going to be as hard of a curve as we might think.
Bryan, working with the CAC, can you shed any insight on how you may be pivoting using technology to diversify your offerings?
I don't know if this is a technology specific, but I mean, first off, we were much like the Film Society, we were past the deadline of time where we really needed to start a full strategic planning session and just reassessment of where we are and where we want to be in the next 5 years. And so we're still moving forward with that. We're reassessing what role we can play as a community-based arts organization. We were open for a few weeks in June with limited capacity and attendance for the exhibitions that we had that had been running all spring before they closed, and that seemed to work well. I went a few times and participated and took some friends, and it was actually a great opportunity to be closer and sit with the art longer than maybe you would normally, with respect to it being more crowded or people there. So that was great. I think with all the organizations that I'm involved in right now, really where we're focused is more about like what are the patterns of behavior or the habits that we had organizationally prior to this that we don't want moving forward. But maybe I'm in the smaller camp on this here, but I don't think that, like, I'm staying away from encouraging how I don't think that this is going to be an entirely new world from an operating standpoint, community wise, 5 years from now. So why would we wholesale change who we are, how we present what we do to the community for a year or 18 months or whatever that time frame is? So I mean, it's a good opportunity to change patterns of behavior that have been unhealthy for organizations in whatever form that is. But I mean, I think we're still looking at the heart of the CAC is the building that we have that can bring the community together for events. I mean, the Film Society, the film festival is supposed to take place in large part at the CAC, which is great. I mean, this is, that's a collaboration that makes sense organizationally and with the mission. And it's even though it's not it's not our exhibition, it's theirs, but it's a great partnership. I think people in 2 years are going to want to get together and watch film together and discuss film together. And so I don't know that we're doing technology's obviously been helpful for board members and staff members to communicate from afar and discuss ideas and keep momentum moving. That's been great. I think we've realized how badly we need an updated website that taps into the work that we've done historically in archives and stuff like that. But the Civic, we're not trying to do live, remote live events at the Civic, because to me that's not what the Civic is. The Civic is a place for the community to come together, to celebrate community together. And whether it's a live music show, live theater, a nonprofit gala, or a wedding, whatever it is, like that's its role. And it is, the whole model is large gatherings there. CAC's got much more of a different role that it plays amongst different types of community events. But again, I think there's, we will get back to where we were at some point, or maybe not where we were, but we'll get back to being together as a community, hopefully in better ways.
Yeah, Bryan, you touched on the fact
If I
that
can
this
add,
time. Yeah, go ahead, Alphonse.
no, so I was just listening, and those are all great points. As a executive director of a nonprofit, especially in the arts sector, we're always looking for ways that align with our mission to generate more revenue for our organization. And so, whereas I do believe at the very core of the arts is it's an exchange of information, but also we as people, I'm a firm believer that we as people are meant to congregate and be together and to socialize in person. And so my hope is that in 5 years or 2 years or however many years it is, that we are able to do that again. But I will say that it is interesting that we're in a place now that is causing us to think about how we can use technology to reach a larger audience, so that when we do get back to the status quo of however many folks were joining us at our event venues or whatever sort of seasonal programming we have, that then we can also have an extra platform or an extra thing to draw in more of an audience, which I think could lead to generating more revenue for nonprofit organizations who just their mission is to put out great work. And that's whether it's a museum, a cultural center, the ballet, the opera. We're not an organization, but man, we would love to have a situation where if we had a gala and we had full attendance, to have more attendance via whatever virtual platform is used, because it gives us access to. So I think I definitely echo the points of I hope and I believe it's important for us to get together once this whole thing is over. But I think that if we take the moment now to build some tools, it can only amplify our reach to people.
Yeah, I would like to add also on Bryan's comments that so for the film festival, I mean, we remain optimistic that 2021 is going to happen, as a live event with people sharing an experience in one room. But we're also hoping to and we keep reminding ourselves during the strategic planning, like we're not planning to live like this for, an extended period of time. We're planning to get to the 2021 festival, but our strategic plan is, for 5 to 10 years out. We're not trying to lock ourselves into that. The future of the Film Society is to live under the restrictions of a pandemic. And that doesn't, for the arts in general, like Alphonse said, people need to experience art as a community. So hopefully that, we're getting there sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And bridging on what Bryan was mentioning about having to reevaluate priorities during this time, I wanted to pose it to Reid to say, what is one priority that you are going to focus on moving forward?
Well, I think that all these points that have been made are right on the money, but I also think that one of the silver linings that I've discovered in both my performing side and through my work with the Grammy organization is that delivery of content in whatever form it is in this new world, through Zoom or Facebook or whatever it is, has become a more accepted vehicle to get it out there. And so, I mean, one of the last gigs I played was at the Civic for a private event, and as a performer, there's nothing that's going to replace being able to interact with an audience. But I'll just give you an example. My band, Bucktown All Stars, had played a fundraiser for the Jazz and Heritage Music Fund at Rock and Bowl, and it was a couple months ago, and we had 11,000 views from all over the country, and a week later, there was upwards of 20,000 views of that performance from people that never get a chance to see us because they don't live here, And so the hope is that from that perspective, when those people do come to New Orleans, or if we happen to be in a city that they're at, that they live or they happen to be visiting, that hopefully they'll come see us and pay the cover charge or buy a merch or whatever it is, right? So that's one aspect of it. From the Recording Academy side, I mean, I'll give you just an example. Typically, we host a membership celebration. My chapter of the Academy covers a 5-state region from New Orleans up to Memphis up to St. Louis. And my nearest coworker is 6 hours away in Memphis, right? So being able to communicate in a more face-to-face way has become more of an accepted thing from just internal communications. And now I'm able to have face-to-face conversations with folks in the home office out in Santa Monica that prior to this just wasn't an accepted practice. Not that it was anything wrong with it, it just wasn't the way we did things, and now it is. And so it's actually broken down barriers within our organization. Similarly, with our membership, which all over the 5-state region, this past Tuesday night, we hosted our first ever virtual membership celebration, which offered an opportunity for members from all corners of all 5 states that we cover to actually participate. And it was amazing. And, one of the things, and we built basically a pre-taped program that was an hour and a half long, that had all kinds of talking head things. It had memorials to the musicians that we've lost. It had live music that was pre-taped, but live performances that we showed to our community members. We introduced our new board. We honored our Grammy nominees from the region over the last year, things like that. And I really wondered what the audience was going to be like. And we maintained and grew the audience throughout the entire event. And at the end of the hour and a half presentation, we used the Zoom's breakout room feature to actually do virtual networking. And it was supposed to last a half an hour, and it lasted an hour and a half because people were just so hungry to connect with people from other parts of our chapter that we've never seen. So we had a recap with our executive committee the next morning, and we said, that was an unexpected aspect of this because we thought people would be sick of being online after an hour and a half of watching a program, and we thought we'd lose our audience throughout. We thought they'd tune in the beginning and just dwindle away, and they didn't. They stayed, and they kept asking for more of these little rounds of these speed networking. We had set up like a dozen chat rooms in Zoom at the end of the event, and we hit a random select people to put people in a chat room together for 5 minutes at a time, and we thought we'd do 2 or 3 of those rounds, and we wound up doing like 7 of those rounds because people just loved being there and they got a chance to connect. So the way I'm looking at it is that, in the long term, we're going to certainly go back to in-person meetings because you can't replace that, right? But I think that we can't just flush this down the toilet once it's done because we've developed new ways of communications and new ways of reaching out beyond what we can normally reach in a regular kind of setting, And then just a couple more anecdotal things. For instance, Grammy-winning artist John Cleary from here in New Orleans, I actually showcased him as the way he's dealing with COVID-19 because he's developed some really cool things that he does from his house. One, he does a thing that he calls the World Tour. So he does some of his concerts at night at 8 p.m. He does some of them at 8 in the morning because John has developed this international audience, and he knows his audience is in bed at 8 o'clock at night, his European audience and his audience in different parts of the world. So he's tailor-making his performances to meet where his audience is. And in addition to just doing performances, he's doing online piano lessons, beginner level, where it's just like one key at a time, learning how to play songs. He's doing piano lessons from the standpoint of developing deep into the New Orleans piano traditions and how this artist led to that artist and how they picked up different things. So it's become way more than a vehicle to just perform. It's become a vehicle to really engage your audience in new ways and build that long-term audience that's going to stick with you forever. And so I just think that, the focus going forward is how do we continue to utilize these things that we're developing now and mesh those into what would be our normal course of action with regard to gatherings at festivals or conferences or wherever it might be, And so I just think that there's a lot of possibilities to utilize what's being built in this COVID times to be able to take it to a new level of communicating with our audiences, whoever those audiences might be.
Yeah, and I think at this time we're going to take a couple questions from the chat box.
Hi, panelists. This is Caroline Hayes. I've been monitoring the chat window and getting some questions texted to me. So first off, I just want to personally thank all of you for being here and sharing your insights in this thought-provoking discussion. First up, Reid, you mentioned taking advantage of time to shore up one's intellectual property. This can be an expensive endeavor. How can artists with limited means access resources that could help them to take legal ownership of their cultural products and assets, from legal representation to the actual funds? Where does this get started?
Well, so it's interesting that you say that because I'm actually working on a project with a artist manager who moved here about a year ago from New York, and she and I are putting a program together that we're calling House Cleaning, which basically is we're going to have representatives from ASCAP and BMI and Sound Exchange and a couple of music publishers that will give you some of the basics that you can do it yourself. There's a number of opportunities to do it yourself. It's just sometimes you need to be led in the direction of where do I find that information. But in many cases, especially here in New Orleans, so many artists haven't really thought about the amount, how do they make sure that their music is copyrighted? How is it registered? There are some costs involved, and Donna being an attorney and has worked on a lot of those things through the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and we've partnered with Jazz and Heritage for many years on the Sync Up series. There's a lot of information out there that you can tap into that doesn't cost you any money. What it costs you is the time and the effort to do it and to get it done right. And I think that's one of the things that since musicians can't really perform live, and we're hoping that they're writing new songs and all those kind of things as this time's going on, but it's also a great time to do the house cleaning, as my friend Amy calls it, where you can actually take the time to do the homework that needs to be done. And really, the music industry, the long-term income in the music industry is in the music publishing. It's in creative uses of your music, and it's a pennies game, but you need to be able to be plugged in and have your different licensing things and your registrations in place to actually collect those pennies. And over time, those pennies add up. And we call it mailbox money, as Tara referenced earlier. You want to be earning money while you sleep, and that's how you do it, is by making sure that you take care of all of those registrations, whether it's with the Copyright Office or sign up with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC or GMR, or make sure you're registered with Sound Exchange. Start building relationships with music supervisors, get involved with music publishing. There's so much out there that's free, and why not take advantage of those opportunities now while you can't perform?
The ELO project was helping, which is a not-for-profit organization, was helping, assisting people with filling out their copyright registration form as an FYI.
Yeah, and
I was
Monica
about to mention that, Tara. Ashley Keaton.
Yeah. Monica asked in the questions I saw earlier, so sorry if I'm going to bust you on this question, but she asked about what resources for licensing songs to video games, film, and stuff like that. So actually, I partnered with the film festival and NOLA BA, and we brought in we started a music initiative at the film festival, which I've been in talks with them again about continuing this year, maybe under different circumstances. But it was a great opportunity where we actually trained, and it was a partnership that started with Ella and the Jazz and Heritage and NOLA BA, and it moved through a multi-part series where we actually trained local songwriters and composers how to take care of all these copyright issues. And then, like, I know I did a capstone course for them on how do you pitch your music to a music supervisor. And then the actual event was we brought in 6 music supervisors from all over the country to New Orleans to listen to our artists, to meet them, to be involved in workshops. And some of those artists, all of those artists got an opportunity to pitch. Not all of them got stuff selected, but Tara, what did we have? Like 15 walked out of there with songs that were potentially selected for movies. And I know 3 or 4 of them have come to fruition. So, building on that momentum year after year, we could really make a better connection between the New Orleans community of songwriters and composers with the buying audience, which is out there, and for the most part, they're outside of New Orleans. But if they can start looking here for opportunities to license music, that just raises all of our ships in that rising tide. So
Right, and for audience members who aren't familiar with music supervisors, they actually place the content for film and TV and video games and advertising and the like.
Yeah. You know, this is to all the panelists. You have all mentioned these remarkable programs that you're working on, and you're connected to these really incredible institutions that support arts, music, and entertainment in our city. How are you seeing arts funding and the supporters that are so critical to underwriting a lot of these efforts responding to what's happening right now? Are you seeing them offering additional funds in order to help figure out how to navigate this paradigm shift and execute innovations, or are they pulling back on making funding commitments out of uncertainty on their own futures?
I can offer insight from a couple different, from, let's say, from Contemporary Arts Center and New Orleans Airlift. I think what we've seen is individuals who have made prior commitments following through on them still, which is great, that they haven't abandoned those commitments. Some people who were looking to make commitments are now in a bit of a holding pattern, which is totally understood. As far as grants and organizations, we've found most of them being extremely generous in either loosening restrictions around money that was already granted, or expediting funds that maybe had time restrictions on them, and or opening up new grant opportunities. Not that we've necessarily been awarded those yet, but just those opportunities being present. So, there was a heavily restricted grant for a specific project for New Orleans Airlift that I don't think I can discuss the specifics of the project, but the grantors of that grant basically released the funds and said they could be used for general operations. Told the organization not to worry about that grant project at the moment, stay focused on survival, and they would revisit that project on the backside of this. So just moves like that to me are hugely indicative of both a continuing sign that these organizations recognize the importance of art, not just when things are going well, but certainly even more so when things aren't going well. Across the board, that's sort of what I've seen for both of those organizations. I mean, the venue side, again, we think we'll be okay, but I know a lot of venues that are may not be okay, and I don't think there has been support for those in the same respect. I know that a lot of promoters and a lot of venue owners and operators are having a really, really tough time right now, and very concerned about their future.
I just want to echo what Bryan said. The Arts Council, we're a grantor of state and municipal funds. We've been doing that for a couple of decades now, and that's been a practice of ours. And it seems like it's a practice of foundations, whether it's the NEA or some private foundations, is to not restrict to the projects or whatever the commitments were in the application. It's to allow organizations to use the funding for general operating support. At the state level, they've actually gone a step further and converted decentralized funds to artist relief funds. So the Arts Council, we are a grantor of state funds for the Greater New Orleans area region. That's coming online soon. So, I think as best as possible, organizations with the little money that they have or have control over are wanting to make sure that it gets into the hands so that folks are supported. In the future, especially for sources of money that may depend on the economy or the stock market and that sort of thing, you may or may not see a strain there. But I'm hopeful that by that time, by 2021, we'll be able to figure something out. So that's just funders again.
Thank you again. It looks like we are hitting our 1 hour mark, so I'll turn it back over to Rebecca to wrap things up.
Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you for the audience who sent in those thoughtful questions. I know we're hitting 12, but I did want to give everybody an opportunity to speak one more time and leave any final thoughts. And always curious to hear any silver linings. Tara, we'll start with you.
Right. I would just say continue to, support the artists in terms of if they do have online performances, any streaming or whatever, be supportive of them there, tip them. And also, I know that the drive-in concert sold out, really quickly. So maybe perhaps they'll be enticed to have, a second round of those. But also, at the reminder to contact the legislators, the federal legislators, and offer your support of the Restart Act. That would be really helpful. And then a couple of the venues also have food. So I would, maybe stop and have, take out or pick up or something from one of those. Every little thing helps.
Reid, any final thoughts?
I was just trying to think of what, I kind of touched on the main things I wanted to touch on, but I think for artists and stuff, I think that now is a good time to, like I mentioned, try and dig a little deeper into what opportunities are out there to diversify your income streams, because it changes from year to year, but the old saying is there's 41 different income streams or 46 different income streams related to music. Some are easier to tap into than others, but really taking the time, you do your homework, and today we have ability to connect with people like we never had before with the internet. So it takes some research, but some good old elbow grease could go a long way in helping you uncover income opportunities that you might not be aware of.
Great. Bryan, any final thoughts?
Nothing really that I haven't already said. Maybe just kind of wrap it up in a simple, this too shall pass. It will. Let's remember that, and take care of the artists. Without the artists, we don't have the art. So if you don't have resources to support them in that way, you've got time. If you're friends with artists, call them, check in on them. Know that a lot of them have been hard hit, especially musicians, and especially musicians in New Orleans. So take care of them so we have something to come back to, and know that this will pass, and stay focused, stay safe.
Thank you. Donna.
Well, I think this is a great time for education and maybe re-education of some of our artists. A lot of times we're presenting seminars and panels when they're all touring and working, and now people have time maybe to pay attention and get a little more educated about the arts industry and what they should be focusing on and how they could improve themselves. So, Reid and Tara, if any of that is being planned and I can be of assistance, just let me know, because I also have time to contribute. So I think that would be a really way to just kind of help people utilize this time in a positive way.
Last but not least, Alphonse.
Yeah, support artists, arts organizations, businesses, whether that's your favorite restaurant, go and buy a plate, donate to an organization. Every bit of money matters, and go look up your favorite artists, and whether it's on Apple, buying a song from a great musician, or going to an visual artist page and buying a piece or print. Just do all that you can as a community member to contribute. The arts community was very instrumental in the wake of not only the pandemic, but in New Orleans resilience post-Katrina. And so, I'm encouraged by the thinking, the passion, the problem solving, the ability to inspire. And so I think that once we get past this, New Orleans and the arts community is going to be maybe even in a better shape than we were hopefully before.
Thank you. On behalf of AOS and everyone tuning in today, I want to thank our panelists for their creative leadership, their ability to band together to make sure that our community emerges smarter. We will be sending up a follow-up email to everyone that has tuned in today with some of the resources that our panelists have described. So that way you know how to get plugged in further with our community, with helping our artists and our musicians. Next month, we'll be discussing resiliency in education. So be on the lookout for that date coming out soon.
Thanks
So
for
thank
having
you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.